Good morning, you guys. It's your boy Bill Mahari here, represent Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LDBC and the basketball community. If you want more basketball content, tune in to Basketball Conversations starting tonight. And it's on weekly, Friday nights, 9 p.m. Central Time. This is where we discuss basketball related topics, news, debates, and everything else in the world of basketball. If you are new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon to get all the latest notifications when I start dropping videos and live streams. And please spread the word about the channel as well. We're about 29 subscribers away from the big 800. So everybody that knows that's been on my channel for the longest of times, I need your help to try to spread the word about the channel. We are growing. We are nearly there to 1,000 though, man. So let's keep on pushing. Let's keep on grinding. So for this week's version of Historical Perspective, is basically my weekly episode show every Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Central Time. This time around, we're gonna do a video about one of the best players, during in Dallas Maverick history, and a player that Mr. Black Fight Fan TV loves. So this is for you, Black Fight Fan. So we're gonna touch upon the historical perspective on the career of Mark Aguirre. So this is a player that was perhaps one of the best scoring forwards that you'll find in the NBA. Okay, but people don't know too much about his childhood, and so I did the liberty of doing some research about him and figuring out who this guy, really was and where he came from. So Mark Aguirre, what I didn't know about him was is that he was nearly born on a train. His mother was only 16 years old when he gave birth, and she was living in Arkansas when she was pregnant. During her 9 month of pregnancy of giving birth to him, she rode a train to Chicago where most of her family was living in, and was thinking about giving this baby to her sister. But by the time she arrived to Chicago, she went into labor, and her family rushed her from the train station to the hospital, where eventually he was able to come into this world. And so, very interesting that nobody knows about that, but he was raised by pretty much by everyone. Okay, his grandmother raised him during the 70s, and his other grandmother, his other grandmother, pretty much loved him throughout his life, okay, who he adored, would also raise him as well. His mother Mary would die of cancer during the mid '80s, and he pretty much said that the ladies in his life pretty much taught him how to keep his head on straight while growing up on the west side of Chicago. He also was growing up in an environment where pretty much gang violence and the drug trade was pretty much evident everywhere. Um, he grew up basically watching his best friend, literally shot point blank in the face. And then another friend of his, when he was basically in it as a kid, was basically, shot in the back of the head. And he also had an uncle who was basically stabbed 27 times. I'm telling you, you want to talk about the definition of growing up rough. The only person that can relate to that was Isaiah Thomas, who also grew up on the west side of Chicago. And so they pretty much grew up in very rough circumstances. And thankfully, basketball was a saving grace that pretty much got him out of the streets. He played at Westinghouse High School over there, okay? And he pretty much accepted a scholarship to play at DePaul University. And during the 3 seasons when he was playing at DePaul University, he averaged 24 and a half points per game. He was basically the Helms Foundation College Player of the Year, and he was also the USBWA College Player of the Year and the James Naismith Award winner back in 1980. And during those 3 years, he helped lead the DePaul Blue Demons to the Final Four back in 1979, where eventually they lost to Indiana State and future Hall of Famer Larry Bird. He also played alongside Terry Cummins and basically was in the national spotlight. He averaged 24 points a game as a freshman. You know what I mean? Then over the next 2 years, he averaged 26.8 points per game as a sophomore and 23 points per game as a junior. All right, and he played on the USA Olympic team in 1980, but unfortunately they did not compete because of the 1980 Summer Olympics boycott. Therefore, he decided to declare for the 1981 NBA draft. And with no surprises at all. During an '81 NBA draft, he was drafted #1 overall by the expansion Dallas Mavericks. His buddy Isaiah Thomas was ended up picking up second in the draft. And so during the course of his 13-year career, he played with the Mavericks until 1989. Okay, in his first season, he was only limited to 51 games due to injury and averaged 18.7 points per game. But by the big start of the 82-83 season, Aguirre reeled off 6 straight seasons in which he averaged 22 points per game. And one of those first of those seasons, he averaged 24.4 points per game and tops on the team and basically was sixth in the league in scoring. And he was one of the big reasons why the Dallas Mavericks became a laughingstock to near a title contender. Okay. So during the 83-84 season, he averaged 29.5 points per game. That was second in the league behind Adrian Daney's 30.6. And pretty much finished up that year scoring 2,330 points. He was pretty much the vocal point of the team, okay? And it really helped a lot when they brought in Orlando Blackman, Brad Davis, Pat Cummins, those kind of players, all right? Then they got even better when they actually signed they also drafted, I forgot, Brian Danielson, and then also bringing in Roy Tarpley, okay? And he was a 3-time All-Star in 84, 87, and in 88, okay? And when he was playing, during his time in Dallas, they were pretty much underachievers. And they made their own lone appearance to the Western Conference Finals back in 1988, in which they fell short in 7 games against the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers that went on to win their second straight NBA championship. But unfortunately, you know, those happy days didn't last too long. Okay, um, his relationship with his coach Dick Mata, along with players like Orlando Blackman, Derek Harper, and James Donaldson, were pretty much deteriorated. And Donald Carter, who was the owner of the team at the time, wanted him to stay his entire career with the Dallas Mavericks. But by that time, Aguirre's attitude and his laziness towards the team was just too unbridgeable. And midway through that 88-89 season, Mark Aguirre was traded to the Detroit Pistons for Adrian Dantley. And people talk about how that trade was a bit controversial to a certain extent because Adrian Dantley, even though he helped the Pistons with winning at that time, he was not well liked by the Pistons because Adrian Dantley wanted to be the sole focus of that team, but it was pretty much Isaiah's team at the time, and became a conflict of interest. And both of them two guys don't get along to each other to this day. But when Mark Aguirre came into Detroit, it was pretty much a risky trade at the time because of the attitude and the reputation he obtained in Dallas. People thought that the Pistons that was going to go for a championship that year pretty much took a steep step back when they brought in a Mark Aguirre. But at that period of time, Mark Aguirre was pretty much going to do whatever it took to win a championship. So therefore, he sacrificed scoring and putting up big numbers in the promise of a championship. And in the 88-89 season, he achieved it, helping the Detroit Pistons win the first of 2 NBA championships. But during the 88-89-90 season, he would sacrifice his playing minutes and his starting position for Dennis Rodman during the 89-90 season because when you look back at that Detroit Pistons documentary by ESPN 30 for 30, Mark Aguirre knew that Dennis Rodman was going to be the key to their success based on his defensive ability and rebounding. And he knew he couldn't hold Dennis Rodman back. So he basically convinced Dennis to be in the starting lineup, and pretty much the change was made. And Mark Aguirre was willing to come off the bench. And even though Mark Aguirre averaged 11 points per game during the playoffs at that period of time, okay, he pretty much accepted the role as a sixth man, and it worked out to perfection. But you know, due to the injury and his own aging at the time, he played only 3 more seasons with the Pistons at a limited role until he was basically was released, and then was signed with the LA Clippers for only $150,000 up until the last year in 93-94 in which he retired. So when you look back into his career, he was basically a bruising 6'6" small forward. He can shoot from various areas on the court. He can shoot from mid range. He can shoot from three. He was a good post player. You know what I'm saying? He could score in bunches. That's why he rolled off 6 straight seasons in which he was averaging more than at least 24 to 29 points per game. I mean, this guy was pretty much a scoring machine. But if he didn't had the attitude problems, with the Mavericks at the time, they would have had a great chance to be title contenders and maybe just a little bit of hope, maybe get past the Lakers. But the Lakers at that time were just loaded, with the Showtime Lakers of Magic, Kareem, Worthy, Byron Scott, and them guys. It was not going to be easy. And they took the Lakers to 7 games and used every bit of energy to try to get it to 7 games. But unfortunately, the overall experience and talents won out for them in the end. But when you look at Mark Aguirre's career in this proper context, he is a legit Hall of Famer. You don't have a career averaging 6 straight years when you're averaging at least 25 points per game and not get any Hall of Fame consideration. And the fact that Mark Aguirre has not even had a lick into the conversation of the Hall of Fame is a joke. All right. This guy was a scoring machine, and he was one of the most underrated small forwards in the game. And the guy can really much lit up the basket anytime he wanted to. He was just a powerful force inside and outside. And a guy that is still respected to this day in the Dallas Mavericks organization. Okay. When pretty much before he left, okay, this guy was pretty much set season scoring records with 13,930 points. It was still the highest scoring total in history before Rolando Blackman broke it, and then obviously Dirk Nowitzki broke it with over 31,000 points in his career. But now to this day, Mark Aguirre is third on the all-time scoring list. But there's no doubt in my mind, without Mark Aguirre being drafted to the Dallas Mavericks, the Mavericks would have not been the team that what they would have been. And the foundation of their success laid through the work of Mark Aguirre. I mean, because of his not just his talents, but his ability, to score in bunches and make his team, better. And he pretty much was a guy that was pretty much dedicated to his craft and scoring. And he was a guy that could fill up a bucket and fill up the bucket real good. And so I wanted to give this video a little bit of a tribute to one of the best small forwards during the 80s, and certainly a guy that Black Fight Fan TV is certainly going to love and appreciate the most. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know what your memories are of Mark Aguirre during his career in both Dallas and Detroit.